हेलो एवरीवन, वेलकम टू माय चैनल ओमनी ज्ञान। मेरे चैनल ओमनी ज्ञान में आप सब लोगों का फिर से बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। आई वेलकम ऑल ऑफ यू टू माय चैनल ओमनी ज्ञान। सो वंस अगेन आई हैव ब्रॉट अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट वीडियो फॉर ऑल ऑफ यू, द पोर्ट्रेट ऑफ अ लेडी, कोर इंग्लिश क्लास 11. Okay, and I am on the verge of completion of all the lessons that you have in your class 11 English. Okay, मैं सारे lessons जो है वो रेगुलरली ला रहा हूँ ताकि इन अ फ्यू डेज, कुछ दिनों के अंदर मैं पूरे लेसन जो है वो मैं कंप्लीट कर दूँ। योर नेक्स्ट वीडियो विल बी, इसके बाद जो वीडियो जो कल आएगा वो वीडियो होगा, बहुत स्टूडेंट्स ने मुझे रिक्वेस्ट किया था, द वाइट सील। तो वाइट सील के ऊपर एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट वीडियो एक्सप्लेनेशन आएगा ऑन द वाइट सील। अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एक्सप्लेनेशन विल कम tomorrow. Okay, and then in paths untrodden, after that in paths untrodden, all the videos are absolutely ready. Okay, I will be regularly uploading all those videos. मैं regularly upload करता रहूँगा वो videos। और I would like to request at this start only, please follow me on Instagram and Facebook also. And I would like to request all of you at the start itself, subscribe to the channel to get more benefits. Okay, so the portrait of a lady, core English for class 11 in both, and here is the full explanation of the story. तो पहले देख लेते हैं what is the story all about. Okay, let us just try to see what is the story all about. So introduction to the story. Okay, it's only a one-page introduction. So introduction to the story. The portrait of a lady crafted by Indian writer Khushwant Singh. That is, the portrait of the lady has been written by the veteran writer, okay, Khushwant Singh, and he explores how the relationship between the main character, that is the writer himself, and his grandmother changes as he grows older. ओके, तो जैसे जैसे खुशवंत सिंह राइटर जो है वो बड़ा होता जाता है, उनके जो ग्रैंड मदर है, ओके, उनके साथ राइटर का रिलेशनशिप किस तरीके से चेंज होता जाता है। सी, व्हेन वी आर अ किड, वी शेयर अ वेरी डिफरेंट रिलेशनशिप विद आवर ग्रैंड पेरेंट्स, राइट। हम जब बच्चे होते, छोटे होते, तो हमारे ग्रैंड पेरेंट्स के साथ, ग्रैंड मदर के साथ हमारे रिलेशन बड़े इनोसेंट होते, बहुत ही क्लोज होता है। लेकिन जैसे जैसे हम बड़े होते जाते हैं, देयर कम्स अ बिग जनरेशन गैप, एक बहुत बड़ा जनरेशन गैप होता है। तब हमें जो है उनके साथ ज़्यादा टाइम बिताना जो अच्छा नहीं लगता है। क्यों? क्योंकि दे हैव अ वेरी ट्रेडिशनल कन्वेंशनल मेंटेलिटी, और हम जो है आज के जनरेशन के हैं, ट्रेंडिंग जनरेशन के हैं, तो हमारे साथ उनका मेंटेलिटी इतना ज़्यादा मैच नहीं होता है। तो दैट इमोशनल सेपरेशन कम्स, ओके, दैट मेंटल इमोशनल सेपरेशन कम्स। तो यहाँ पे वही चीज़ जो है पूरे कहानी में, इन द एंटायर स्टोरी, दैट थिंग इज बीइंग स्पोकन by the writer actually. Okay, initially viewing his grandmother, beginning में जो है, if you look at the book, the opening lines of the story, I have the book in my hand, and if you look at page number 35 of the book, page number 35 of the book, अगर आप देखें, I'm talking of resonance. Okay, this is resonance, I'm talking of resonance. So if you look at the book, you'll find in page 35 the beginning lines. I'll just read the lines in the opening lines of the story. My grandmother, like everybody's grandmother, was an old woman. ठीक है, एक बहुत abrupt opening है, एक बहुत simple but एक बहुत abrupt opening है. She had been old and wrinkled for the 20 years that I had known her. People say that she had once been young and pretty. Obviously, every person is young in the initial stages of their life, but later on, as time passes, years roll on, people become old. So people have, people around, लोग जो आसपास हैं, वो कहते थे कि ये जो ग्रैंड मदर थी, ये एक ज़माने में जब वो यंग थी तो वो बहुत प्रिटी लगती थी, बहुत सुंदर दिखती थी, एंड हैड इवन अ हस्बैंड, बट दैट वाज हार्ड टू बिलीव. सो यू सी, द लाइन्स आर वेरी फनी ऑल्सो, बट द लाइन्स हिट योर हार्ट. कैसे? ये लाइन देखिए कि द राइटर इज टेलिंग दैट मेरी जो दादी माँ है वो सबकी तरह बहुत बुरी है, वेरी ओल्ड, लेकिन लोग ये बोलते हैं, उनकी रिंकल्स हो चुके हैं, उनके पूरे चेहरे पे रिंकल्स हैं, ओके, लेकिन लोग ये कहते थे, पीपल से दैट शी वाज वंस अपॉन अ टाइम वेरी यंग एंड प्रिटी, एंड शी आल्सो हैड अ हस्बैंड. ठीक है, शी आल्सो हैड अ हस्बैंड एंड दैट इज हार्ड टू बिलीव. तो लोग ये कहते हैं कि ये जो दादी माँ है, उनका एक हस्बैंड भी था, इनडायरेक्टली द राइटर्स ग्रैंडफादर. तो लोग कहते थे कि उनका एक हस्बैंड भी था, लेकिन ये अनबिलीवेबल है, लेकिन क्योंकि मैंने कभी अपने ग्रैंडफादर को शायद देखा नहीं होगा, तो ये अनबिलीवेबल है. तो इट्स अ वेरी फनी ओपनिंग आल्सो, बट इट टचेस योर हार्ट एक्चुअली. So initially viewing his grandmother only as old, he adamantly rejects the idea that she might have had a lively youth. अब ये बात बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है जानने के लिए। जैसे जैसे स्टोरी प्रोग्रेस होगा, as the story will progress, you will see how the story progresses, okay, from a very normal thing to a very emotional point in the story comes, transition in the story comes, okay। अब यहाँ पे जो है the writer rejects the idea कि लोग ये कहते थे, people used to say that once upon a time she had been very young and she had been very pretty, the grandmother, but the writer rejects the idea completely। writer इसे मानने के लिए बिल्कुल तैयार नहीं है that she had a lively youth। the story vividly reveals, okay, बहुत clearly जो है reveal करता है slowly the serene nature of his grandmother throughout। तो पूरे कहानी के शुरुआत से, from the starting of the story till the end of the story, the grandmother had a very serene nature। serene मतलब बहुत silent nature। her character was not loud at all, her character was completely silent। that means what? इसका एक और मीनिंग हम लोग निकाल सकते हैं। we can find out, in other words we can say that she, the grandmother, accepted everything very quietly, very silently। ठीक है, ग्रैंडमदर ने सब कुछ जो है बहुत क्वाइटली, बहुत साइलेंटली एक्सेप्ट किया है। ठीक है, तो वही कहानी जो है प्रोग्रेस होता जाता है और हम देखेंगे, we will study all the aspects very nicely, okay। so now the full summary of the story, okay। now the writer briefly describes his grandmother's appearance। I told you the opening lines in the story, of the story, the writer briefly describes his grandmother's appearance, that she was having wrinkles, she was an old lady, and when he was a child, and noting her typical old wrinkled look that matched most grandmothers। तो जितने भी grandmothers हैं इस दुनिया में, सबके wrinkles आते हैं। all the grandmothers in this world, they have wrinkles। so the writer tells nothing new। तो राइटर ने कहा कि मैं बचपन से उनको ऐसे ही देखता आ रहा हूँ, रिंकल्स के साथ, बूढ़ी औरत, ओके। तो मैं ये मानने के लिए बिल्कुल तैयार ही नहीं है। आई एम नॉट रेडी टू इवन बिलीव दैट शी वॉज वंस वेरी ब्यूटीफुल एंड यंग, क्योंकि मैं उन्हें बचपन से बुरी ही देखता आ रहा हूँ, ओके। आई हैड बीन सीइंग हर ओल्ड ओनली सिंस माई चाइल्डहुड, सो आई कैन नॉट एक्सेप्ट द फैक्ट दैट शी हैड बीन ब्यूटीफुल वंस अपॉन अ टाइम, ओके। तो डिस्पाइट हियरिंग अबाउट हर ब्यूटी इन हर यूथ when she was married, he couldn't picture it। एक होता है ना कि ग्रैंडमदर के यंग पिक्चर जो है राइटर देखे, तो राइटर ने कभी जो है अपने ग्रैंडमदर का कोई पिक्चर, फोटो, उनके यंग डेज का कोई फोटो राइटर ने कभी देखा ही नहीं था। तो राइटर इसलिए ये मानने के लिए तैयार नहीं था। राइटर वाज नॉट रेडी टू बिलीव बिकॉज ही हैड नॉट सीन एनी पिक्चर ऑफ हिज ग्रैंडमदर्स यंग डेज। तो इसीलिए वो ये मानने के लिए तैयार नहीं था दैट शी वाज ब्यूटीफुल एंड शी वाज मैरिड। उन्होंने कहा कि मैं बचपन से मेरी ग्रैंडमदर को अकेली ही देखता आ रहा हूँ। आई हैड बीन सीइंग माय ग्रैंडमदर ऑल अलोन एंड विदाउट एनी ब्यूटी, रिंकल्स के साथ, ओके। एंड ऑल्सो ही ह्यूमरसली इमेजिन्ड हिज ग्रैंडफादर एज समवन हु हैड नो फैमिली बट लॉट्स ऑफ ग्रैंडचिल्ड्रन, ओके। सो अबाउट हिज ग्रैंडफादर ही सेज दैट माय ग्रैंडफादर मस्ट हैव बीन समबडी हु हैड नो फैमिली, क्योंकि मेरे ग्रैंडमदर को देख के मुझे आइडिया आता है दैट माय ग्रैंडफादर डिड नॉट हैव एनी फैमिली एट ऑल, because my grandmother is so silent, okay। she accepts everything without even speaking a word। so the writer says that I cannot imagine that my grandfather once had any family। he had no family, but yes, he had lots of grandchildren, okay। now without family, how can he have grandchildren? So this is a very humorous point on the part of the writer Khushwant Singh, okay। So from birth he saw his grandmother as an elderly lady only। as I told you कि बचपन से जो है राइटर उनके ग्रैंडमदर को ऐसे ही देखता आ रहा है, as an old lady, elderly lady only। he struggled to envision her as a young woman। ठीक है, तो फिर से वही चीज है कि the writer is not ready to believe that my grandmother would have been a young and beautiful woman, okay। he says that my grandmother is old, उनको मैं बचपन से ऐसे ही बुरी ही देखता आ रहा हूँ और मैं ये मानने के लिए बिल्कुल तैयार नहीं, ओके। तो जस्ट एज ही कुडंट ग्रास्प हर स्टोरीज ऑफ चाइल्डहुड प्ले। तो बचपन में होते हैं ना, आवर ग्रैंडमदर्स टेल अस सो मेनी स्टोरीज। बचपन में हमें बहुत सारी कहानियां सुनाया करते हैं, अपनी लाइफ के बारे में भी बहुत कुछ बोलते हैं। यू नो, आवर ग्रैंडमदर्स दे शेयर देयर चाइल्डहुड डेज आल्सो स्टोरीज विद अस। सो इवन खुशवंत सिंह's grandmother, the writer's grandmother here, maybe told the writer many stories about her own childhood, But the writer cannot believe all these things. The writer says, no, these are all false. Okay, my grandmother had told me all those cock and bull stories. सारे झूठे कहानियां सुनाए, क्योंकि मेरी ग्रैंडमदर, मेरा जो ग्रैंडमदर है, कभी वो यंग थी ही नहीं, वो ऐसी थी. Okay, so despite this, he always found her beautiful. But regardless of the fact that he tells all these things, that my grandmother was never young, my grandfather never had a family, my grandmother is always silent. Despite all these negative points also, the writer finds her beautiful. And the writer also compares her to a serene snowy mountain. तो एक snowy mountain जो है बिल्कुल silent, उसमें कोई हलचल नहीं. Okay, there are no movements, it's completely silent at all. So in the same manner, he compares his grandmother with a very silent snowy mountain landscape with her white attire. So his grandmother was very fair also. Okay, his grandmother was very fair, that is why snow is white, right? So his grandmother was very fair, that is why he compares his grandmother to a snowy mountain because of her fair complexion and also silver hair. Okay, his grandmother had silver hair, symbolizing peace and contentment. Contentment means satisfaction. So his grandmother basically was a very satisfied lady. I mean, he did not have any complaints. I'm sorry, she did not have any complaints. उनका कोई complaints नहीं था, no demands, no desires, nothing. She was always very peaceful in her character. So her character is basically a peaceful and happy or satisfied. Contentment means satisfied. So the grandmother was a very peaceful and satisfied character. She did not wanted anything in life. She remained silent all the time. ठीक है, आप लोगों को समझ में आ गया होगा. तो जाते हैं नेक्स्ट पॉइंट पे. नाउ देयर रिलेशनशिप इवॉल्व्ड ओवर द इयर्स. तो उनका जो रिलेशनशिप है, ग्रैंडमदर एंड ग्रैंडसन, द राइटर एंड हिज ग्रैंडमदर, देयर रिलेशनशिप, ओके, दिस ग्रैंडमदर एंड ग्रैंडसन रिलेशनशिप, इट started growing in some manner. Okay, whatever the manner is, we will learn that, but it started growing over the years. Now whether the growth is negative or positive, we will learn that later. Okay, क्या ये growth, क्या ये bonding अच्छा होता गया या बुरा होता गया, whether the bonding was good or bad, okay, that we will learn a little later. So over the years उनका bonding जो है grow होता गया. So as a child, his grandmother cared for him while his parents sought a better life in the city. Now it is very important to note that when the writer was small, actually as a child, it was the grandmother who took care of the writer. ठीक है, it was the grandmother who took care of the writer. And the writer's parents, writer का parents जो है, उनको थोड़ा अच्छा बेहतर जिंदगी चाहिए था. They wanted a better life, so they moved to the city and started living there. So the writer was completely under the care of the grandmother. राइटर जो है बचपन से जो है पूरे अपनी ग्रैंडमदर के केयर में था. और राइटर का जो पेरेंट्स है, द पेरेंट्स ऑफ द राइटर, दे वांटेड अ बेटर लाइफ, सो दे स्टार्टेड लिविंग इन द सिटी. सो राइटर वो लिव्ड विथ हिज ग्रैंडमदर विदाउट पेरेंट्स. ठीक है. नाउ द राइटर एंड ग्रैंडमदर वुड गो टू द टेम्पल एडजेसेंट स्कूल टुगेदर. सो एक टेम्पल और स्कूल दोनों साथ साथ है. ओके, अ टेम्पल एंड अ स्कूल बिल्डिंग. ओके, these are very close to one another. So the writer along with his grandmother, when he was a child, they used to go to this temple come school, okay, together, and with him in classes and her immersed in scriptures. Okay, the grandmother, as all the Indian grandmothers, they do not have pastimes like today we have. Today for everything we need a mobile. Mobile is like oxygen for all of us, right or wrong? Mobile is like oxygen for all of us. Okay, but just think of our grandmothers. Okay, just think of our grandmothers, those of our grandmothers who are alive. Okay, they do not know how to use mobiles. Many of our traditional grandmothers, grandfathers, especially grandmothers, they do not know how to use a mobile. So what did they do? They stay at home and read holy books. So immersed in scriptures means, evening time she would be sitting at home and reading these holy scriptures, reading scriptures at home. Okay, like in the Indian tradition, most of the grandmothers that I have seen, they read the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, okay, sitting at home. Okay, so sometimes they would go to the temple, school, and sometimes the other times the grandmother would be reading those holy books. And what did the writer do after school? After school, she fed stray dogs stale chapatis followed by their playful journey home. Okay, तो जब writer जब छोटा था, when the writer was very young, the writer and the grandmother, while returning from school, okay, the grandmother would be feeding the stray dogs some stale chapatis, okay, yesterday's chapatis, okay, and they would playfully come back home. तो writer और grandmother जो है वो street dogs को खाना खिलाते थे, okay, और बहुत हंसी खुशी जो है वो घर वापस आ जाते थे. They would return home in a very playful manner. Okay, तो राइटर और ग्रैंडमदर का जो, अगर मैं राइटर का बचपन का बात करूं, अगर मैं इफ आई टॉक अबाउट द राइटर्स चाइल्डहुड बॉन्डिंग विथ द ग्रैंडमदर वाज वेरी स्ट्रांग. तो चाइल्डहुड में राइटर का बॉन्डिंग जो है ग्रैंडमदर के साथ, इट वाज वेरी स्ट्रांग बॉन्डिंग. लेटर ऑन व्हाट हैपेंड, लेट अस सी दैट. You see here, things changed. Things changed when his family settled in the city. He attended an English school and their routine shifted. Now, slowly things started changing when his family, that is his parents, they all settled in the city only. And now the writer attended an English school, a very high-fi kind of standard English school. And his routine now was different. उसका जो रूटीन था, अब वो रोज ग्रैंडमदर के साथ स्ट्रीट डॉग्स को खाना नहीं खिला सकते थे. नाउ द राइटर स्टार्टेड स्पेंडिंग लेस टाइम विथ हिज ग्रैंडमदर, and his grandmother was also not able to feed the stray dogs because the grandmother maximum time she stayed at home only. I mean, all the time she stayed at home only, right? There's a big difference between village life and city life. Okay, now it is, because it is an English medium school, your grandmother cannot suddenly go to your school and meet you. All the English schools, if you see, they have certain disciplines, right? So now the grandmother, most of the time, she stayed at home only. And the writer's routine also changed a lot. Now, no street dogs meant feeding sparrows. As they learned Western sciences, their conversations altered. Now you see, during childhood, the writer and his grandmother used to talk about all those innocent things, fairy tale stories and all. But now, because the writer was attending a very standard English school, so he was learning Western sciences there. वो Western sciences सीख रहा था. Hi-fi medium English medium school में he was learning English. Alright, and so the topic of the discussion became completely different as compared to their childhood discussions. Childhood में जो वो डिस्कस अपनी ग्रैंडमदर के साथ डिस्कस करता था, अब वो टॉपिक्स के ऊपर डिस्कशन नहीं होता है. नो मोर इनोसेंट टॉपिक्स. एंड यू सी नाउ a very simple old lady, and say for example I, good in English, or I know mathematics, science, go to big English schools, I will not have the same conversation with my grandmother now. My mentality has completely changed. So that is what happened with the narrator of the story, the writer and his grandmother. Their conversations altered. अब उनका topic of discussion, conversation बिल्कुल अलग हो चुका था. Her inability to assist with this lesson saddened her. अब देखिए, the writer was learning, the narrator of the story, he was learning Western sciences. And a simple lady like the grandmother was unable to provide any help in the discussion regarding Western sciences. She would be talking simple things. Kaha simple things, kaha Western sciences. So this lady, the grandmother, was unable to now catch up with the writer. The writer had become now, he was talking about the trending things. And the grandmother, who was old, remained traditional in her mentality. So this actually saddened her. Okay, वो दुखी होती थी. She started becoming sad because she was not able to carry on with the conversations, discussions with the writer at all. Because the narrator now did not talk about simple things. He talked about hi-fi standard things. The grandmother does not understand anything. Now, especially there is one particular thing here, that her inability to assist with this lesson saddened her, especially the absence of teachings about God. and music. Earlier, you see, when the writer was a child, the grandmother used to talk about God and music, simple topics about God and music. But now you see, because the writer was now learning Western sciences, so the writer now did not have any interest in these topics. Standard has raised now. इसलिए grandmother और भी दुखी हो चुकी थी. She had become more, she had become sadder now, and this caused a strain in their bond. तो यही इसी point से जो है, right from this point, this becomes the starting point that they were having emotional separation now. They were having emotional separation now, because the topic of discussion was not the same that they used to do. The writer had no music, the narrator had no interest, the narrator had no interest listening to God and music, teachings of God and music, no. So now their bonding started breaking now. उनका bonding जो है वो break होता चला गया, slowly lose होता चला गया. ओके, इनका जो बॉन्ड है हम लोग कह सकते हैं ब्रेक नहीं कह के, आई वुड से लूज होता चला गया. ठीक है, तो आगे देखते हैं. लेट अस सी व्हाट हैपेंस लेटर. नाउ द राइटर बिकेम बिग. ही लेफ्ट फॉर यूनिवर्सिटी स्टडीज. वो यूनिवर्सिटी पढ़ने के लिए चला गया. एंड देयर फ्रेंडशिप, दैट इज द फ्रेंडशिप ऑफ ग्रैंडमदर एंड नैरेटर, द राइटर, इट faltered, it decreased, it came down drastically, it changed drastically now. All right, so another turning point in the story is when he left for higher studies, when he left for the university studies, the grandmother and narrator's friendship faltered, it fell down. He returned intermittently, finding his grandmother seemingly unchanged. See, the writer had changed, but the grandmother had not changed at all. She had remained that same old, simple lady with wrinkles. But the writer had changed completely. Getting the point? And he was very surprised to see that I have changed, but my grandmother had not changed at all. She was having that same old mentality only. Alright? And her joy still lay with the sparrows. Now you see, one point here is that, and the sparrows are very important, are a very important part actually. You have learned, those who have taken alternative English in class 11, you have learned a story on the sparrows, right? So here again, sparrows have got not a very important role to play, but actually it is there because the ending of the story is very emotional. Now, if you remember, I told you that she used to, when the writer was a child, she used to feed, while returning from the school, she used to feed the stray dogs with the stale chapatis, right? With the chapatis. But now that she moved to the city, where will she find street dogs? So, on her veranda, आंगन जो होता है ना, veranda, वहाँ पे sparrows आते हैं, and she would feed the sparrows with bread crumbs. तो ब्रेड के टुकड़े वो स्पैरोस को खिलाती थी. सो विलेज में जो है, गांव में, ओके, या सेमी अर्बन एरियाज में, शी वुड फीड द डॉग्स, एंड नाउ हर हैबिट हैज नॉट चेंज्ड. शी इज नाउ फीडिंग द स्पैरोज विथ ब्रेड क्रम्स every day, and the sparrows would come and eat. So her joy still lay with the sparrows only and singing with local women. तो वहाँ पे कुछ local women आती थी, and the grandmother would sing songs with them. Her health declined slowly. Her age was, she was becoming aged. वो aged होती जा रही थी, तो her health started declining. उनका health खराब होता जा रहा था. And despite their reluctance, she prayed, foreseeing her end. लेकिन फिर भी जो है, ये जो दादी माँ है, the grandmother, her health declined, but still every day she prayed, and she knew that very soon I will be dying, because my end was coming very soon. I am becoming old now, so my end was coming very soon. And I told you one thing, that she accepted everything very silently, very quietly, and she knew that death was universal. It would come one or the other day, and I am growing old now, I will die one day, and she accepted that fact. And every day she prayed silently, as if Like she had already seen that no, death is coming to me. It is coming very soon, and I will be dying very soon. And she accepted the fact very, very, very slowly. Okay. And shortly after, she passed away. Very soon, she died. And what did she leave? See, every day she would be feeding the sparrows, right? And now also the sparrows came, leaving behind a room filled with sparrows. So when she died, there were sparrows who were eating the breadcrumbs, okay, and who were there. All right. I would like to, regarding this, I would like to read some lines from the book, okay, that before she died, actually, when her health started going down, actually, she was lying on the bed. The writer, his family members, all were there beside the grandmother. And what did the writer tell here? In page 38, the first paragraph itself, I'll tell you. She lay peacefully in bed, praying and telling her beads. Beads is a kind of a garland, okay, and it's a kind of a praying thing, okay. They take in the thumb, between thumb and the forefinger, and they go on counting the beads, actually, okay. So that is a kind of a prayer. So even before we could suspect, the writer is telling that even before we could suspect, her lips stopped moving, and the rosary fell from her lifeless fingers. So that those beads, that garland type of thing, fell from her fingers. A peaceful pallor spread on her face, and we knew that she was dead. So in this way, she died. All right, a very emotional kind of a death. And the writer somewhat regrets a little bit. And then I'll give you a very short analysis after the story ends. And now let's see what happens. This is the last part. The family mourned. Obviously, a family member, when a family member dies, we all become sad. So the entire family mourned. They became sad. They cried. And what happened next was that they tried to feed the sparrows, but the sparrows remained unaffected. They did not eat a single piece of crumb, a single grain of crumb, bread crumb. They did not eat, the sparrows. Can you imagine? I'll give you an analysis later in the story, and you'll see that sparrows are much better than human beings. This is not what I am telling. This is what the writer is telling, okay? And the analysis will tell you that. So the sparrows did not eat because their feeder, who was the grandmother, had died. So the sparrows were not accepting to eat the breadcrumbs from other people. किसी और के हाथ से वो bread खाए. The sparrows were not doing that. Now, as they carried the grandmother's corpse means dead body, okay? As they carried the grandmother's corpse, as in the Indian tradition, okay, for cremation, for burning in the cremation ground, crematorium, the sparrows quietly flew away. So when the dead body of, there were sparrows, okay, when the grandmother died, there were sparrows in her outside her room, or in her room, okay, there were sparrows. Breadcrumbs were lying, but the sparrows were not eating. As if the sparrows also meant to say that our feeder has died and we cannot enjoy eating. Right? Look at the sparrows, okay? Now, when they carried the grandmother's dead body, when they were carrying the grandmother's dead body to the crematorium ground, the sparrows also quietly flew away without eating even a single breadcrumb. एक भी breadcrumb को ना खाते हुए जब grandmother के dead body को ले जाया गया या ले जा रहे थे वो लोग जब crematorium शमशान, तो sparrows भी उड़ गए. जैसे कि ऐसा लगता है कि जो हमें खाना खिला रही थी वही चली गई तो हम यहाँ पे रह के क्या करेंगे. Our feeder has left. So what we will do by staying here? Okay. Now next morning what happened, you see, when the sweeper came to sweep the room. जब next morning, yesterday, say for example, grandmother died, she was taken to the crematorium, all the all the rituals were completed yesterday. Now today, next day, when the sweeper came to sweep the room, the breadcrumbs were lying there. Breadcrumbs तो वही पे थे, right? But not a single sparrow had come to eat those. जिस दिन से grandmother का dead हो गया, the moment the grandmother died, all the sparrows quietly flew away. And from next day, the sparrows never came to eat. Never came to eat. Okay, and this is how the story ends. Okay, it's a very beautiful story, and I hope that all of you have liked the story. I have explained the story in a gist so that all of you understand. And one thing I would like to tell all the students, that please take the help of the book. Okay, please take the help of the book, so that it will help you. You know, while watching my explanation, you keep looking, turning the pages of the book also. It will help you for your objective type questions also, because the story is quite big, and going line by line is not a very easy and simple task. Okay, it will take a lot of time. Okay, so I've explained the story in brief. Now let us come to an analysis here. So what is the analysis? The portrait of a lady intricately paints the relationship between the author and his grandmother. This we know, that in the entire story, the writer is only talking about his relationship, his friendship, his bonding with his grandmother. Okay. Second point, true to its title, the portrait. What is the name of the story? The name, the portrait of a lady. Okay. So true to its title, the story creates a vivid portrayal. So the entire story is about the portrayal of a lady, which is a grandmother. So the story creates a vivid portrayal of the grandmother, who remains consistent throughout the years. Consistent here means unchanged. Her character does not change at all. See, first point, she was a silent lady. She remained silent until she died. She accepted everything heartily. She accepted her death. Right? She loved talking about the teachings of God and music. Till her end, she had been, praying. She had been learning the teachings of God, and she had been, singing songs with the women there in the city also. So her character remained unchanged. Then earlier she used to feed the dogs. Now she fed the sparrows. So her character remained unchanged. It is the writer who changed. It is the author who changed. It is the mentality of the author which changed later because of education. The more educated we become, there is a disadvantage of education also. There is a very big disadvantage of education. It makes us arrogant. A little learning is a dangerous thing. We say, there's a saying, no, that a little learning is a dangerous thing. But I say that more learning is much more dangerous than a little learning. Because when you learn more, no, you become arrogant, that I know everything. So this happened with the writer also. Okay, he had learned Western sciences, gone to English medium, big English medium school, then gone for university, studied, dealt with Western sciences. So obviously, the bonding became lesser. The bonding declined. Okay, he would have easily talked with his grandmother about the teachings of God and music, but no, he talked more about his own subjects, topics, Western sciences, English, which the grandmother did not understand. But the grandmother did not have any complaint. She remained unchanged in all these aspects throughout the years until her death. And then what happens? Her thoughts, lifestyle, routine appears unchanged. Everything was unchanged. I told you, thoughts, lifestyle, routine, completely unchanged, contrasting the significant transformations in the author. The author had changed. The author's character had changed. In the childhood, he would be listening, he would be going to school, temple come school with his grandmother, then feeding the dogs very happily while returning from the school with his grandmother. All right, and then talking about the teachings of God and music with his grandmother. He liked this at all. But as he grew, there was a significant change in the writer, and he undergoes. And why does the change occur? It is due to his education, both India and abroad. So in India also, in the English medium school in the city he studied, then he went to university abroad. So that changed his character at all. He started feeling that I have learned everything in life. I don't need the support of my grandmother anymore. So their bonding decreased. So he changed, but the grandmother had not changed at all. Despite this, the grandmother embraces change effortlessly. So despite all this, despite this change in the writer, because the grandmother loved his grandson very much. Okay, because since childhood, the grandmother had been taking care of the writer, because the writer's parents started living in city. So the grandmother might have expected somewhere inside her heart, that the bonding becomes stronger. But no, it did not happen. But the grandmother accepted it, and very happily accepted it. And She, throughout her life, she led a life characterized by tranquility, silence, and simplicity until her passing. When she lived in the village, she had the same lifestyle. When she went to the city, she had the same lifestyle, and she was as silent and as simple as she had been always. So one thing we learn is that we must always remain simple and unchanged. Let the world change, but let us not change. I'm talking in terms of our nature. You know, when I don't have money, um, I'm very noble, very good, very simple. The moment I have money, if I become arrogant, then I am actually a false character. Then the last one is that in the author's adult years, she appears distant and unexpressive, hardly communicating with him. How will grandmother communicate with the writer? It is impossible. The writer was now talking about Western sciences, talking in, big English words. Yeah, that is not, for the grandmother, it is not her cup of tea. So she and the writer became distant. It is the writer actually who had distanced himself from the grandmother. The grandmother never distanced herself from the writer. It is the writer. It is the writer actually. So the entire responsibility, the blame actually will fall on the writer only. Alright. But however, you see this last point, you see, it hits us. It hits our heart directly. It will hit your heart directly, this last point. However, this perception is challenged by the flock of sparrows. You see, humans changed, but sparrows did not. And these sparrows, when grandmother died, the sparrows left and did never come. Perhaps the sparrows were also sad, and the sparrows mourned her demise, her death. Demise means death. I'll read these lines once again. I love this, beautiful. However, this perception is challenged by the flock of sparrows that mourn her demise, and they never came back. So it is better. You see, that is why I said sparrows are much better than human beings. They understood that our feeder is dead. There is no use now coming back to this house because no one will feed us. No one is going to feed us. So it is no use coming to this house back. And our favorite person, the grandmother, who was feeding us with bread, crumbs, she left. So the sparrows challenged human beings. A small tiny bird challenged human beings. That you change, but we do not change. Right? So this is the end of the story. Please let me know in the comment section how you like the story, and what relationship do you share with your own grandmother, grandfathers, especially grandmother, because we have learned the portrait of a lady. So what kind of relation do you share with your grandmother, and if there is any distance between you and your grandmother, how would you make that bonding stronger? Okay, from this lesson, I think many of you who have grandmothers, and you feel that you have distanced yourself, or due to some circumstances, your bonding has become distanced. You'll make your bonding stronger once again. So please let me know in the comment section. Okay, how did you like the story, and what kind of relationship you share with your grandmother? Okay, so that's all from me for today. Thank you so much for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel, like and share my videos as much as you can. And with love from Omni Gyan, all the best to all of you. Thank you so much.